Some men inherit castles. I got a switchboard and a brother who'd sell me for parts. My name is Mark Parrish, and I run the commercial side of Parrish Electric. Well, ran it. Past tense seems more appropriate now, considering what happened next. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday in our mid-sized Midwestern city. I was sitting in my office at 7:30, coffee growing cold while I reviewed bids for the new hospital expansion. The familiar hum of the building filled the air, phones ringing, Mary, our office manager, gossiping with whoever would listen, and the distant sound of trucks being loaded in the yard. "Mark, you got a minute?" John's voice carried that particular tone I'd learned to recognize over the years. My older brother had perfected the art of sounding casual when he wanted something. "Sure, what's up?" I didn't look up from the blueprints spread across my desk. "Just wanted to run something by you about the Henderson project." Now I looked up. John was leaning against my doorframe, arms crossed, wearing that charming smile that had gotten him out of trouble since we were kids. At 41, 3 years my senior, he still carried himself like the golden boy everyone expected him to be. "What about Henderson?" "Well, I was thinking maybe we should swap it. You take the Morrison residential development. I'll handle Henderson commercial." I set down my coffee cup slowly. "John, Henderson is a $2 million contract. Morrison is maybe $300,000, and it's cookie-cutter houses." "Yeah, but you're so good with the residential stuff." That was John speak for, "I want the big commission." I'd heard variations of this conversation before, but something felt different this time. Maybe it was the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes, or how his smile seemed forced. "The Henderson contract is already signed with my name on it," I said. "Besides, you hate commercial work. Too much paperwork." "Come on, Mark. We're brothers. We should help each other out." "We do help each other out. That's why the business works." John's smile faded slightly. "Mom thinks it might be good for me to take on more responsibility." There it was, the trump card. Our mother Ruth owned 60% of Parrish Electric, with John and I splitting the remainder. She'd built this company from nothing after Dad passed 15 years ago, and her word was law. Did Mom actually say that, or is this your interpretation? "She's worried about the future of the company, Mark. About succession planning." I leaned back in my chair, studying my brother's face. John had always been the favorite, more outgoing, better with clients, the kind of guy who could sell ice to penguins. But he lacked attention to detail, and his project management skills were questionable at best. "Tell you what," I said finally, "let's table this for now. I need to get these Henderson specs finalized." John's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sure, we'll talk later." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. After he left, I tried to focus on work, but something nagged at me. John's sudden interest in commercial projects, the mention of Mom's concerns, the way he'd been acting lately, more secretive, taking longer lunches, whispering phone calls. My cell phone buzzed. Beth, my wife of 16 years. "Hey, can you pick up Bree from soccer practice tonight? I've got that thing." "What thing?" "I told you about it. The charity committee meeting." I scrolled through my mental calendar. Beth had been having a lot of committee meetings lately. Book club, charity work, fitness classes. For someone who used to complain about being stuck at home, she'd certainly become social. "Right. What time should I be there?" 6:30. "And Mark, can you grab dinner for everyone? I'll probably be late." "How late?" "I don't know. These meetings can run long." There was something in her voice, a distraction, like she was thinking about something else while talking to me. "Okay. See you tonight." "Love you," she said, but it sounded automatic. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a moment. When had Beth started sounding like she was reading from a script? I pushed the thought away and dove into work. The Henderson project was complex, a new office building with specialized electrical requirements. It would take months to complete and establish Parish Electric as a major player in commercial construction. This was the kind of contract that could set us up for years. Around noon, I walked out to the main office to grab some files from Mary's desk. She was on the phone but waved me over. "Hold on, Janet," she said into the receiver, then covered the mouthpiece. "Mark, honey, you know I don't like to gossip, but—" Mary was 62 years old and had been with the company since Mom started it. She was also the biggest gossip in 3 counties, which made her an invaluable source of information. But what? Well, Janet was just telling me she saw Beth at that new fancy gym downtown, the one with the personal trainers. Okay. She was with John. I felt something shift in my chest. When? Yesterday afternoon. Janet said they looked pretty cozy. Lots of laughing. Maybe John was thinking about joining. Mary gave me a look that said she'd raised 3 kids and could spot nonsense from orbit. "Honey, your brother hasn't exercised voluntarily since high school." She had a point. John's idea of physical activity was walking to his truck. "I'm sure it's nothing," I said, but the words felt hollow. "I'm sure you're right," Mary said, but her tone suggested otherwise. "Janet, you still there? Sorry about that." I grabbed the files and headed back to my office, but Mary's words echoed in my head. Beth and John at the gym. Lots of laughing. It probably meant nothing. Beth had been trying to get everyone in the family to be more health-conscious lately. But why hadn't she mentioned running into John? The afternoon dragged by. I found myself checking my phone more often than usual, looking for messages from Beth that didn't come. Around 4 o'clock, I decided to call it a day and swing by the house before picking up Bree. Our home sat on a quiet street in one of the city's better neighborhoods, a 2-story colonial with a big yard that Beth loved to complain about maintaining. I'd bought it when the girls were small, thinking we'd fill it with family gatherings and birthday parties. Now it often felt too big, too quiet. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Beth's car was gone, probably running errands before her meeting. Inside, the house had that empty feeling that comes when no one's been home all day. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat at the kitchen table, looking through the mail. Bills, advertisements, a letter from Bu's school about college preparation seminars. 15 and 13. Where had the time gone? Bu was already talking about universities, while Bree was discovering boys and makeup. They were good kids, smart and athletic, though they'd inherited their mother's sharp tongues and their father's stubborn streak. I was sorting through the mail when I found something that made me pause, a hotel receipt mixed in with the credit card statements. The Marriott downtown, 2 nights last month, charged to our joint account. But we hadn't stayed at any hotel last month. I studied the receipt more carefully. The dates coincided with Beth's girls' weekend trip to Chicago. She'd said they were staying with her college roommate. Maybe there'd been a change of plans. Maybe the roommate's place fell through. But why not mention it? I folded the receipt and stuck it in my pocket, telling myself I was being paranoid. Married couples didn't account for every dollar spent. Trust was the foundation of any good relationship. So why did I feel like the foundation was shifting under my feet? At 6:15, I drove to the soccer fields to pick up Bree. She jogged over to the car, grass-stained and sweating, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that reminded me of Beth at that age. "How was practice?" I asked, as she threw her gear in the back seat. "Good. Coach says I might make varsity next year if I keep improving." "That's great, honey. Where's Mom?" "Committee meeting. We're on our own for dinner." Again? Bree buckled her seatbelt with more force than necessary. "She's been having a lot of meetings lately. She's just trying to stay busy." "Yeah, busy," Bree muttered, staring out the window. We stopped for pizza on the way home. Bu was already there, books spread across the dining room table, attacking her homework with the same intensity she brought to everything else. "Finally," she said when we walked in. I'm starving. Where's Mom? She asked, echoing her sister's question. Meeting, Bree and I said simultaneously. Beau raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. At 15, she'd developed a teenager's radar for family tension. We ate dinner while the girls told me about their days, Beau's chemistry test, Bree's drama with her best friend, the usual teenage concerns that seemed monumentally important and completely trivial at the same time. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting to hotel receipts and gym sightings and the way Beth's voice had sounded on the phone. Dad, you're not listening, Beau said. Sorry, what? I asked if you could help me with my physics homework. We're studying electrical circuits. Sure. Let me see what you've got. For the next hour, I helped Beau work through problems involving voltage and resistance, explaining how electricity flows through conductors and what happens when circuits are overloaded. It felt good to focus on something concrete, something with clear answers and predictable outcomes. So if too much current flows through a circuit, it trips the breaker? Beau asked. Exactly. It's a safety mechanism. Without it, the system would overload and potentially cause damage. What if the breaker doesn't work? Then you get a fire. Or worse. Beau nodded, scribbling notes. It's all about balance, right? Too much power in the wrong place and everything breaks down. Right. I stared at her homework, thinking about circuits and overloads and safety mechanisms that sometimes fail when you need them most. Beth came home around 10:30, slipping in through the garage door while I was watching the news. She looked tired but also energized, the way people do after a good workout or an engaging conversation. How was the meeting? I asked. Long. Productive, but long. She kicked off her heels and rubbed her feet. The girls get dinner? Pizza. They're both upstairs doing homework. Good. She headed toward the kitchen. I'm going to grab some water and then shower. Beth? She turned back. Yeah? Mary mentioned seeing you at the gym yesterday, with John. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise? Annoyance? Then it was gone, replaced by a smile. Oh, right. I ran into him there. He was asking about membership rates. John wants to join a gym? Apparently. Said he was tired of feeling out of shape. She shrugged. People change, Mark. I guess they do. She studied my face for a moment, then came over and kissed my forehead. You worry too much. It was just a coincidence. I know. I just thought it was funny, that's all. Hilarious, she said, but there was an edge to her voice. I'm going to shower. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of water running through the pipes. On the television, the weather forecaster was predicting storms for the rest of the week. I pulled out the hotel receipt and stared at it again. $238 for one night. Room service charges. Parking fees. The kind of expenses you'd rack up if you were entertaining someone. I folded the receipt and put it back in my pocket, telling myself I was reading too much into things. Marriages went through rough patches. People grew apart, then found their way back together. It was normal. But as I turned off the television and headed upstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my world. Like a circuit that had been carrying too much current for too long, and the safety mechanisms were starting to fail. I just didn't know yet how big the fire would be when everything finally overloaded. The call came at 9:47 on a Wednesday morning. I remember the exact time because I was staring at my computer screen, trying to focus on electrical load calculations, while my mind wandered to the growing pile of evidence I'd been collecting over the past 2 weeks. More hotel receipts, unexplained charges at restaurants I'd never been to, text messages that Beth deleted before I could see them, and yesterday, the kicker, John's cologne on Beth's jacket when she came home from another committee meeting. Mark, you need to come home. Now. Beth's voice was crisp, businesslike, the tone she used when dealing with contractors or scheduling appointments. What's wrong? Are the girls okay? The girls are fine. Just come home. Beth, I'm in the middle of… Now, Mark. The line went quiet. Not the normal quiet of someone hanging up, but the particular silence that follows an ultimatum. I grabbed my keys and drove home with a growing sense of dread. The feeling intensified when I turned onto our street and saw the moving truck in my driveway. Two guys in work shirts were loading our dining room table into the back of the truck. Our dining room table. The one we'd bought for our first apartment 16 years ago. The one where we'd eaten countless meals and helped the girls with homework and argued about bills and made plans for the future. I parked on the street and walked up the driveway like a man approaching his own execution. "Excuse me," I called to the movers. "What's going on here?" The older one, a guy with graying hair and tired eyes, looked up from the table. "You the husband?" "Yeah, I'm the husband." "Sorry, man, we just moved the stuff. We don't ask questions." I found Beth in the kitchen, supervising the packing of our dishes. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by the same businesslike expression I'd heard in her voice. "We need to talk," she said. "I can see that. Where are my daughters?" "They're safe. They're with John." Of course they were. "Beth, what the hell is going on?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "These are divorce papers. My lawyer says you have 30 days to respond." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "Just like that?" "It's not just like that, Mark. It's been building for months. Years, maybe. We've grown apart." "We've grown apart, or you've grown closer to my brother?" Her jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it directly. You're sleeping with John." "That's ridiculous." "Hotel receipts, Beth, restaurant charges, the way you smell like his cologne when you come home from your meetings. You want to keep lying, or do you want to have an honest conversation for once?" One of the movers appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding a box of dishes. "Ma'am, where do you want these?" "In the truck," Beth said, without taking her eyes off me. After he left, she sat down at the kitchen counter. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, human. "I never meant for it to happen," she said quietly. "But it did happen." "Yes. How long?" "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She was quiet for a long moment. 6 months. Maybe 7. 7 months. While I was working 60-hour weeks to build the business, while I was helping the girls with homework and fixing the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom and planning our anniversary dinner, my wife was having an affair with my brother. "Why John?" She looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Pity. "Because he pays attention to me, Mark. Because when he looks at me, he sees a woman, not just a wife and mother and housekeeper. Because he makes me feel alive." "And I don't?" "When's the last time you really looked at me? I mean, really looked, not just glanced up from your blueprints or your phone or whatever project you're obsessing over?" I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because she was right, at least partially. I had been distracted lately, focused on growing the business, on providing for the family. When had I stopped seeing Beth as a person and started seeing her as just another part of my daily routine? "So you decided to destroy our family instead of talking to me about it?" "I tried talking to you. You were always too busy." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" She stood up, smoothing down her shirt. "Mark, we haven't had a real conversation in months. We haven't been intimate in even longer. We're roommates who happen to share children. So fix it. We can go to counseling. We can work on things." "It's too late for that." "Why? Because of John?" "Because I don't love you anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. I'd been expecting them, but hearing them spoken aloud was different. Final. "And the girls? You're just going to uproot them from their home?" "They'll adjust. Children are resilient." "They'll adjust to living with their uncle who's sleeping with their mother?" Beth's face flushed. "John and I are going to get married after the divorce is final." How romantic. A real fairy tale ending. Don't be sarcastic, Mark. It doesn't suit you. What does suit me, Beth, since you've apparently given this so much thought? She was quiet for a moment, then picked up her purse. I'll be staying at John's until I can find my own place. The girls will be with me. Like hell they will. Mark, don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. My wife is leaving me for my brother, taking my children, and cleaning out my house. How exactly could this be harder? You'll have visitation rights. Visitation rights in my own family. It's not your family anymore. The mover appeared in the doorway again. Ma'am, we're about done. Just need to get the rest of the bedroom stuff. Go ahead, Beth said. I watched them carry out boxes of clothes, photo albums, the jewelry box I'd given Beth for our 10th anniversary. Piece by piece, they dismantled the life we'd built together. I want to see the girls, I said. They're at school. After school, then. Mark, maybe it's better if you wait a few days. Let them adjust to the situation. They're my daughters. And they're going through a difficult time. They need stability right now. Stability? You just blew up their entire world. I gave them a chance at happiness. At a real family. With John. Yes, with John. I stared at her, this woman I'd loved for 16 years, and realized I didn't know her at all. Or maybe I'd known her once, but she'd become someone else. Someone who could rationalize destroying a family as giving the children a chance at happiness. You know what the funny thing is? I said. I actually thought we were happy. Not perfect, but happy. Shows what I know. Mark, no, it's fine. You've made your choice. John's made his choice. Now I get to make mine. Something in my tone made her look up sharply. What do you mean? I mean you're not the only one who gets to start over. The movers finished loading the truck and came to the door for Beth's signature. She signed the paperwork, tipped them, and watched as they drove away with half of everything I owned. I'll send you my new address once I'm settled, she said. Don't bother. My lawyer can contact your lawyer. Mark, I know you're angry. Angry? I laughed again. Beth, angry doesn't begin to cover what I'm feeling right now. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. I'll call you in a few days, about the girls. You do that. After she left, I walked through the house, taking inventory of what remained. Half the furniture was gone, most of the photos, all of Beth's personal items and most of the girls' clothes. But they'd left the important stuff. The electrical tools in the garage, my computer with all the business files, the safe in the bedroom closet with the backup drives and financial records. They'd taken the present, but left me the means to control the future. I opened the manila envelope and read through the divorce papers. Beth was asking for half of everything, the house, the business, my retirement accounts. She wanted primary custody of the girls and substantial child support. She wanted to walk away with the life we'd built together, while I started over with nothing. I set the papers on the kitchen counter and pulled out my phone. Time to make some calls. Carl, it's Mark Parrish. Yeah, I know it's been a while. Listen, I need a favor. You still in touch with that private investigator you used during your divorce? Good. I'm going to need his number. The second call was to my lawyer. The third was to Mary at the office. Mary, it's Mark. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to be discreet about it. I want you to pull all the financial records for the past year, everything, bank statements, credit card bills, expense reports, put it all in a box and lock it in my office. And Mary, don't mention this to John. The fourth call was to my accountant. By the time I finished making calls, it was almost 5 o'clock. The house felt different now, not just empty, but hollow. Like a building after the power's been cut off. I walked out to the garage and looked at my tools. Electrical meters, wire strippers, voltage testers. The instruments of my trade, precise and reliable. Tools that helped me understand how power flows through systems, how to control it, how to redirect it when necessary. I picked up a multimeter and turned it on, watching the digital display come to life. In electrical work, knowledge is power. Understanding how circuits function, where the weak points are, how to trace problems back to their source. Beth thought she'd cut me out of the circuit. She thought she could flip a switch and eliminate me from the equation. She was about to learn that I knew a few things about power that she didn't. And the first lesson was this. When you try to overload a system, sometimes the surge goes in directions you don't expect. I put the multimeter back on the workbench and headed inside to start planning my next move. Beth wanted a war? Fine. But she was about to discover that some circuits bite back. The bar was called Murphy's, and it looked exactly like what you'd expect from a place that served electrical contractors and construction workers after long days dealing with other people's problems. Dim lighting, scarred wooden tables, and the kind of atmosphere where conversations stayed private. Lucy Brennan was waiting for me in a corner booth, nursing a beer and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. I'd known Lucy for about 5 years. She ran a small electrical contracting business that specialized in residential work, and we'd bid against each other on dozens of projects. She was tough, smart, and had a reputation for being completely honest, which in our business made her something of an anomaly. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Don't thank me yet. You might not like what I have to tell you." I ordered a bourbon and waited. Lucy was the type who got straight to the point, which I'd always appreciated. Tonight, I needed that directness more than ever. "Your brother's been busy," she said after I got my drink. "The Henderson project? The one you've been working on for months?" "What about it?" "John's been having private meetings with the client, telling them you're unreliable, that you're going through personal problems that might affect your ability to complete the job." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "When?" "Last week, maybe the week before. My source isn't completely clear on the timeline." "Who's your source?" "Amanda Chen. She works in Henderson's accounting department. We went to high school together." Lucy took a sip of her beer. "She called me yesterday, thought I should know what was happening. Apparently John's been positioning himself to take over the project." "On what grounds?" "Family emergency. Said you were having a breakdown, couldn't handle the stress. He presented himself as the responsible brother, stepping in to save the contract." I stared at my bourbon, watching the amber liquid catch the light from the neon beer signs. "Did it work?" "Henderson's considering it. They haven't made a decision yet, but John's been very persuasive. Brought Beth to one of the meetings." "Beth was there?" "Oh yeah. Playing the concerned sister-in-law. Talking about how worried the family is about you, how they just want what's best for everyone." The cold feeling in my chest was spreading, turning into something harder and more focused. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was about systematically destroying my professional reputation while stealing my wife and children. "There's more," Lucy said. "Of course there is. John's been reaching out to some of your other clients, planting seeds of doubt, nothing actionable, just friendly concern about your recent behavior." "What kind of behavior?" "Drinking, showing up late to job sites, making mistakes on estimates." She leaned forward. "Mark, I know you. You don't drink during the day, you're never late, and your estimates are always spot on, but John's been telling a different story. Why are you telling me this?" Lucy was quiet for a moment, turning her beer bottle in slow circles on the table. "Because your brother screwed me over 2 years ago. I bid on a project, had it locked up, then John swooped in at the last minute with inside information and underbid me by exactly $50. Cost me about $20,000 in profit." "I didn't know about that." "I know you didn't. You're not the problem, Mark. You never were." I finished my bourbon and signaled for another. "So, what do you suggest I do about it?" "Fight back. But smart. John's playing dirty, but he's not playing smart. He's leaving tracks." "What kind of tracks?" Lucy reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. Amanda's been keeping records, copies of emails, meeting notes, expense reports. John's been using company money to wine and dine clients while badmouthing you. That's actionable. I opened the folder and scanned the documents. Dinner receipts from expensive restaurants, hotel charges for client meetings that I'd never heard about, credit card statements showing purchases at jewelry stores and clothing boutiques. He's been buying Beth gifts with company money, I said. Looks that way. And charging it all as business expenses. This is fraud. Yep. And your mother's signature is on some of these expense approvals. I looked up sharply. Mom knows? Hard to say. She might have signed them without reading the details. But if this goes public, it's going to reflect badly on the whole company. I closed the folder and leaned back in the booth. John had always been careless with details, but this was beyond careless. This was stupid. And it gave me exactly the leverage I needed. Lucy, I want to make you an offer. I'm listening. Help me expose what John's been doing, and I'll make sure you get the Morrison residential project. It's not huge, but it's steady work. What kind of help are you talking about? Information, documentation, maybe some strategic conversations with mutual clients? She studied my face for a long moment. This isn't about business anymore, is it? No, it's personal. How personal? I told her about Beth, about the affair, about coming home to find movers cleaning out my house. Lucy listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. Son of a gun, she said when I finished. Your own brother. My own brother. And your wife. Soon-to-be ex-wife. Lucy drained her beer and set the bottle down with more force than necessary. Okay, I'm in. Just like that? Mark, I've been in this business for 15 years. I've dealt with cheaters and liars and backstabbers of every variety. But what your brother's doing, taking your family and trying to destroy your livelihood, that's a special kind of low. So, what's our first move? We document everything. Every meeting, every conversation, every expense report. We build a case that's so airtight even your mother won't be able to ignore it. And then? Then we destroy him, professionally and personally. I liked the sound of that. What about Beth? Lucy smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Leave Beth to me. I know some people who know some people. Word gets around fast in this town, especially when it's about someone who thinks she's better than everyone else. I don't want to hurt the girls. The girls will be fine. Kids are tougher than adults give them credit for, but they deserve to know the truth about what their mother and uncle have been doing. We spent the next hour planning our strategy. Lucy would continue gathering information through her contacts, while I focused on securing the evidence we'd need to present to Mom and the company board. We'd coordinate our efforts, share intelligence, and slowly build the case that would bring John down. One more thing, Lucy said as we prepared to leave. Watch your back. If John's desperate enough to steal your family and sabotage your business, he might be desperate enough to try other things. Like what? I don't know. But desperate people do stupid things, and stupid things can be dangerous. I walked out of Murphy's feeling more focused than I had in weeks. For the first time since finding those divorce papers, I had a plan. More than that, I had an ally. John thought he'd won by taking Beth and the girls. He thought he could eliminate me from the business and start fresh with everything I'd worked to build. He was about to learn that some circuits have backup systems. And when the main power fails, the backup doesn't just restore the lights. Sometimes it burns the whole place down. I drove home through the quiet streets, past houses where normal families were settling in for the evening. Families where brothers didn't steal wives and wives didn't abandon their children for affairs with relatives. But normal was overrated anyway. I had work to do. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I was in my office Thursday morning, going through the financial records Mary had compiled, when John walked in without knocking. He looked different, more confident, like a man who thought he'd already won the game. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. Good morning to you too, John. He sat down across from my desk and leaned back in the chair like he owned the place, which, I suppose, he thought he did. I heard you've been asking questions about the Henderson project. It's my project. I'm allowed to ask questions. Not anymore. I looked up from the expense reports I'd been reviewing. Excuse me? I talked to Mom yesterday. She agrees that given your current situation, it might be better if I took over Henderson. My current situation? The divorce, Mark. The personal problems. She's worried about your ability to focus on work. I set down the papers and studied my brother's face. He was trying to look sympathetic, but I could see the satisfaction underneath. This was what he'd been working toward, not just stealing my wife, but taking my professional life as well. And you volunteered to step in and save the day. Someone has to think about what's best for the company. Right. What's best for the company. I opened one of the folders on my desk and pulled out a credit card statement. Is that what this is? Company business? I slid the statement across the desk. John glanced at it, and I saw his confidence waver slightly. I don't know what you're implying. Jewelry store, $347, charged to the company credit card. What kind of electrical supplies cost $347 at Tiffany's? There must be some mistake. No mistake. I've got 6 months of statements here, John. Restaurants, hotels, clothing stores, all charged as business expenses, all coinciding with your affair with my wife. John's face flushed. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I pulled out another document. Dinner at Le Bernardin, $238. The same night Beth told me she was having dinner with her book club. Mark, you're obviously upset. Oh, I'm way past upset. I stood up and walked around the desk. Upset was when I found out my wife was cheating on me. Upset was when I came home to find movers cleaning out my house. This is something else entirely. John stood up too, and for a moment we faced each other like we had as kids, right before one of our fights escalated into something Mom would have to break up. What do you want, Mark? I want you to admit what you've been doing. To me, to Mom, to everyone. And if I don't? I walked over to my filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Then I take this to the state licensing board, and to the IRS, and to every client we've ever worked with. John's eyes widened as he realized what I was holding. You wouldn't. Try me. You'd destroy the company, everything Mom built. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my family. We stared at each other for a long moment. I could see John's mind working, trying to find an angle, a way to talk himself out of this corner. Okay, he said finally. Maybe I made some mistakes with the expense reports, but that doesn't change the fact that you're in no condition to handle major projects right now. According to who? According to everyone who's been watching you fall apart for the past month. I'm not falling apart, John. I'm getting focused. Focused on what? Revenge? Justice. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Justice? You want to talk about justice? How about the fact that Beth was miserable for years while you ignored her? How about the fact that you've been so obsessed with work that you forgot you had a family? So you decided to help yourself to my family? I gave Beth what she needed, what she deserved. And what about what I deserved, what the girls deserved? The girls are fine. They're better off without watching their parents pretend to be happy. That's not your decision to make, isn't it? Beth chose me, Mark. She chose me because I actually pay attention to her, because I make her feel like a woman instead of just a convenient housekeeper. The words hit their target, and John knew it. He pressed his advantage. You want to know the truth? She's been unhappy for years. Years, Mark. You were just too busy with your precious projects to notice. So instead of talking to me about it, she decided to sleep with my brother. She tried talking to you. You never listened. And you did? I listened to everything. Her dreams, her fears, her frustrations, All the things she couldn't talk to you about because you were always working or watching TV or thinking about the next job. I felt something snap inside me. Get out. Mark, get out of my office. Now. We're not finished talking about this. Yes, we are. Because you're fired. John stared at me. You can't fire me. Watch me. I picked up my phone and dialed Mom's number. She answered on the second ring. Mom, it's Mark. I need you to come to the office, now. We have a family emergency. What kind of emergency? The kind that involves your older son stealing money from the company to finance an affair with my wife. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, I'll be right there. I hung up and looked at John. You've got about 10 minutes to figure out what you're going to tell her. Mark, don't do this. Think about the family. I am thinking about the family. My family. The one you destroyed. If you do this, there's no going back. Good. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. Without you. John stood there for another moment, then walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. You know what your problem is, Mark. You think you're the victim here, but you're not. You're just a guy who was so busy building his perfect little life that he forgot to actually live it. And you're just a guy who was so jealous of that life that you had to steal it. I didn't steal anything. Beth came to me. Because you manipulated her into it. Because you drove her away. After he left, I sat down at my desk and waited for Mom to arrive. Through the window, I could see John in the parking lot, pacing back and forth while talking on his phone. Probably calling Beth, warning her about what was coming. Good, let them both sweat for a while. Mary knocked on my door. Mark, your mother's here. Send her in. Mom looked older than her 68 years as she walked into my office. The stress of the past few weeks had taken its toll on all of us, but seeing her now, I realized how much this was going to hurt her. John had always been her favorite, the charming son who could make her laugh and forget her troubles, but some things were more important than keeping the peace. Show me, she said without preamble. I handed her the folder of financial records. She sat down and went through them methodically, her expression growing grimmer with each page. How long has this been going on? She asked finally. 6 months, maybe longer. And Beth? 7 months, according to her. Mom closed the folder and set it on my desk. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she looked up at me with tired eyes. What do you want me to do? I want John removed from the company, immediately. Mark, he's my son. So am I. This will destroy him. He destroyed me first. Mom was quiet again, staring at the folder like it contained something toxic. There has to be another way, she said finally. What other way? He stole from the company, Mom. He used our money to finance an affair with my wife. He's been sabotaging my relationships with clients. What other way is there? We could handle this privately. Make him pay back the money. And then what? Pretend it never happened? Let him keep working here like nothing changed? He made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated plan to take everything I've worked for. Mom stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where John was still pacing. He's always been jealous of you, she said quietly. What? John, he's always been jealous. Even as kids, he resented how easily things came to you. School, sports, work. You never had to try as hard as he did. That's not true. Isn't it? You were Dad's favorite. Everyone knew it. John spent his whole life trying to measure up to his little brother. So this is my fault? No. She turned back to me. This is John's fault, but understanding why he did it doesn't make it easier to deal with. Mom, I need to know you're on my side here. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'm on the side of what's right, and what John did was wrong. So you'll support removing him from the company? I'll support whatever decision you think is best. You're the one who's been holding this place together anyway. It wasn't the ringing endorsement I'd hoped for, but it was enough. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. She was right about that. But sometimes ugly was the only way to get to the truth. And the truth was what I needed now, more than anything else. The first sign that John wasn't going to go quietly came on Friday afternoon. I was at the Henderson job site, reviewing the electrical plans with the foreman, when my phone started buzzing with calls from clients. The first was Peterson Manufacturing, then the school district, then 3 residential clients whose projects John had been handling. All of them had received anonymous letters suggesting that Parish Electric was under investigation for financial irregularities. All of them were concerned about the stability of the company and whether their projects would be completed on schedule. I spent 2 hours making damage control calls, reassuring clients that the company was solid and that their projects were secure. But the damage was already done. Doubt had been planted, and in the construction business, doubt spreads faster than wildfire. Anonymous letters, Lucy said when I called to fill her in. That's pretty desperate, even for John. It gets worse. He's also been calling our suppliers, questioning whether we'll be able to pay our bills. Can you prove it was him? Not directly, but the timing's pretty convenient. I was driving home when I noticed the black pickup truck following me. It stayed 3 cars back, matching my speed, making the same turns. When I pulled into a gas station to test my suspicions, it drove past without stopping, but I caught a glimpse of the driver, a big guy with a shaved head and the kind of build that comes from serious gym time. 20 minutes later, when I pulled into my driveway, the same truck drove slowly past my house. John was escalating. I called Lucy and filled her in on the surveillance. You need to be careful, she said. If John's hiring muscle, this isn't just about business anymore. What do you think he's planning? Hard to say. Maybe just intimidation. Maybe something more serious. Should I call the police? And tell them what? That someone drove past your house? They'll file a report and forget about it. She was right. I needed more than suspicion to get law enforcement involved. Lucy, I want to accelerate our timeline. How quickly can you get me everything you've gathered on John's activities? I can have it all compiled by Sunday. But Mark, if you're thinking about going public with this, I'm thinking about ending this before it gets any worse. Just be smart about it. Don't do anything that gives John ammunition to use against you. After hanging up, I walked through my half-empty house, thinking about John's next move. He'd already tried to destroy my professional reputation and isolate me from clients. The surveillance suggested he was moving into more direct intimidation, which meant I needed to move faster. I spent Saturday morning installing additional security cameras around my property and changing the locks on all the doors. If John wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had evidence of whatever he was planning. The cameras proved their worth that same night. I was in my home office, reviewing financial projections, when motion sensors triggered alerts on my phone. The exterior cameras showed 2 figures moving around the perimeter of my house, the same big guy from the pickup truck, plus a smaller man I didn't recognize. They weren't trying to break in. They were just watching, letting me know they were there. I called the police and reported suspicious activity, but by the time the patrol car arrived 20 minutes later, the watchers were gone. The officer took a report and promised increased patrols, but we both knew it was mostly for show. The message was clear. John could reach me anytime he wanted. Sunday morning brought a new escalation. I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed and "loser" spray-painted across the windshield. The security cameras had caught everything. The same 2 men from the night before, working quickly and efficiently in the pre-dawn darkness. This time, when I called the police, I had video evidence. We'll run the footage through our database, the investigating officer said. See if we can identify these guys. In the meantime, you might want to consider staying somewhere else for a few days. This is my house. I understand that, But if someone's targeting you, it might be safer to lay low until we can figure out what's going on. I thanked him for his concern, but had no intention of running. John wanted me scared and isolated. Giving him what he wanted would only encourage more aggressive tactics. Instead, I called Lucy and moved our meeting up to that afternoon. We met at a coffee shop across town, far from anywhere John might think to look for us. Lucy had brought everything: financial records, witness statements, photographs, email printouts. Enough evidence to bury John professionally and potentially send him to prison for embezzlement. "This is good work," I said, reviewing the documents. "Comprehensive. It should be enough to convince your mother to cut ties with John permanently, and enough to get our clients back on board." "What about the intimidation campaign?" I showed her the video footage from the previous night. Lucy watched it twice, her expression growing darker. "Mark, this is serious. John's not just trying to scare you, he's trying to provoke you into doing something stupid." "Like what?" "Like confronting him directly, getting into a physical altercation that he can use to paint you as unstable. So what do you suggest? We stick to the plan. Present the evidence to your mother and the company board. Let the legal system handle John's criminal behavior. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you watch your back and document everything." I spent Sunday evening organizing the evidence into a presentation that would be impossible for Mom to ignore or rationalize away. Financial theft, client manipulation, witness testimony from multiple sources, a pattern of behavior that went far beyond a simple affair. Monday morning, I called Mom and requested an emergency board meeting for that afternoon. Parish Electric's board consisted of Mom, myself, John, and 2 outside advisors, longtime family friends who'd helped Mom build the company. "What's this about, Mark?" Mom asked. "It's about the future of Parish Electric, and about holding people accountable for their actions. John won't like being ambushed. John's not going to like a lot of things that happened today." The meeting was scheduled for 3 o'clock in the company conference room. I arrived early to set up my presentation and test the audiovisual equipment. Lucy had offered to attend as a witness, but I'd decided this was something I needed to handle alone. At 2:50, Mom arrived, looking nervous and tired. The 2 outside board members, Bill Henderson and Frank Morrison, came in a few minutes later. Both men had known me since I was a kid, and both looked curious about why I'd called such an urgent meeting. John was the last to arrive, walking in at exactly 3 o'clock with the confidence of someone who thought he still controlled the situation. "Okay, Mark," Mom said once everyone was seated. "You called this meeting. What's so urgent?" I stood up and activated the presentation screen. "What's urgent is that Parish Electric has been the victim of systematic financial fraud and client manipulation, and the perpetrator is sitting at this table." John shifted in his chair, but didn't say anything. I walked them through the evidence methodically: the fraudulent expense reports, the misappropriated company funds, the deliberate sabotage of client relationships. With each revelation, John's confident expression cracked a little more. "This is circumstantial," he said when I finished. "You're connecting dots that don't necessarily connect." "Really?" I pulled out the final piece of evidence: bank records showing deposits to John's personal account that corresponded exactly with the fraudulent expense reports. "These dots seem pretty well connected to me." The room was quiet for a long moment. Bill and Frank were studying the financial documents with the attention of men who understood the implications. Mom was staring at John like she'd never seen him before. "John," she said finally, "is this true?" "Mom, Mark's obviously upset about the divorce. Is it true?" John was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Some of it, but it's not as bad as Mark's making it seem." "You stole from the company." "I borrowed from the company. I was going to pay it back." "With what money?" I asked. "You've been living beyond your means for years. That's not your concern. It is when you're using Parish Electric as your personal bank account." Bill Henderson cleared his throat. "John, these are serious allegations. If even half of this is accurate, we're talking about criminal charges. It won't come to that, John said quickly. I'll pay back everything, with interest. That's not the point, Frank Morrison said. The point is that you violated the trust of this company and this family, and endangered our relationships with every major client we have, I added. Mom looked around the table, her face pale. I think we need to vote on John's continued involvement with Parish Electric. Mom, please, John said. Don't do this. We can work something out. The time for working things out was before you decided to steal from us, I said. The vote was unanimous. John was removed from the company immediately, with no severance and no ongoing financial interest. His company credit cards were canceled, his access to company accounts was revoked, and his name was removed from all business licenses and contracts. You'll regret this, John said as he gathered his things. All of you. The only thing I regret, I replied, is not seeing what you really were a long time ago. After John left, the board spent another hour discussing damage control and client relations. We agreed to send a letter to all clients explaining that John Parrish was no longer associated with the company and that all existing contracts would be honored in full. Mark, Mom said as the meeting broke up, I'm sorry about all of this. It's not your fault. I should have seen what was happening, should have paid more attention to the financial reports. John was good at hiding things. That's what made him dangerous. What happens now? Now we rebuild. We restore client confidence, complete our existing projects, and move forward. And John? John made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. But as I drove home that evening, I knew this wasn't over. John had lost his job and his income, but he still had Beth and my daughters. He still had his freedom and his ability to cause trouble. And based on the weekend's intimidation tactics, he wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. The war was far from over. If anything, I'd just escalated it to a new level. But for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I was winning. The final confrontation came on a Thursday night in October, 3 weeks after John's removal from the company. I'd been working late at the office, catching up on project reviews, when Mary knocked on my door. Mark, honey, you need to see this. She was holding her phone, and her face was pale. What is it? John's outside, with Beth and some other people. They've got signs. I walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot. John had assembled what looked like a small protest, maybe a dozen people holding signs that read, Parish Electric steals from employees, and Mark Parrish destroys families. A local news van was parked at the edge of the lot, and I could see a reporter setting up for what looked like a live broadcast. How long have they been there? I asked. About 10 minutes. Should I call the police? Not yet. Let's see what they're planning. I watched from the window as John positioned himself in front of the news camera. Even from 3 stories up, I could see his performance, the concerned expression, the gestures toward the building, the way he positioned Beth beside him like a prop in his narrative. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Mark Parrish. Mr. Parrish, this is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. We're doing a story about allegations of financial misconduct at Parish Electric. Would you like to comment? What kind of allegations? We've received information suggesting that you've been embezzling company funds and using your position to settle personal vendettas against family members. I almost laughed. John was trying to flip the script, positioning himself as the victim and me as the corrupt businessman who'd destroyed his own family out of greed and spite. Ms. Walsh, I'd be happy to provide comment. Are you available for an interview right now? You mean tonight? I mean right now. I'll be down in 5 minutes. I hung up and turned to Mary. Call Bill Henderson and Frank Morrison. Tell them to get down here immediately. And Mary, bring that box of financial records from my office safe. Mark, what are you doing? I'm finishing this. I took the elevator down to the lobby, then walked outside into the cool October air. John saw me coming and stepped forward, his face a mask of righteous indignation. "Mark," he said loudly, clearly playing to the cameras, "I'm glad you're here. The people of this city deserve to know the truth about what you've been doing." "I couldn't agree more," I said. "The truth is exactly what they deserve." The reporter, Jennifer Walsh, stepped between us with a microphone. "Mr. Parrish, your brother has made some serious allegations about your business practices. How do you respond?" "I respond by providing evidence." I held up the folder Mary had given me. Complete financial records for Parrish Electric going back 2 years. Every transaction, every expense report, every client payment, all of it documented and verified by independent auditors. John's confident expression flickered slightly. "Those records don't tell the whole story, don't they?" I opened the folder and pulled out the bank statements showing John's fraudulent expense reports. These show systematic theft of company funds over a period of 6 months. Money that was used to finance an extramarital affair with my wife. These show client meetings that never happened, expense reports for business dinners that were actually romantic dates, and hotel charges for supposed business trips that were actually weekend getaways. The reporter's eyes lit up. This was better than the story she'd come to cover. "Mr. John Parrish," she said, turning to my brother, "how do you respond to these allegations?" "This is exactly what I'm talking about," John said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Mark is using his position to destroy anyone who threatens him, including his own family." "Is that what I'm doing?" I pulled out another document. "This is a letter from the Henderson Construction Company thanking Parrish Electric for our professional handling of their project after concerns were raised about potential delays. Concerns that were raised by someone claiming to represent Parrish Electric, but who was actually trying to sabotage the project for personal reasons." "You're twisting the facts. These are the facts." I held up the folder. 2 years of financial records, client correspondence, and witness statements, all of it available for public review. A small crowd had gathered. Employees from other businesses in the building, passers-by drawn by the news van, curious onlookers attracted by the drama. John's planted protesters were starting to look uncertain, like they weren't sure what they'd signed up for. "Mr. Parrish," the reporter said to me, "these are serious counter-allegations. Do you have additional evidence?" "I have video evidence of harassment and intimidation tactics used against me and my property. I have witness statements from clients who were contacted by someone claiming to represent Parrish Electric, but who was actually spreading false information about the company's financial stability." John stepped closer, his face flushed with anger. "You sanctimonious piece of—" "Careful, John. We're on live television. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won?" "I think I've told the truth, something you seem to have trouble with." "The truth?" John laughed, but it sounded forced. "You want to talk about truth? The truth is that you drove your wife away with your obsession with work and your complete inability to pay attention to anyone but yourself. The truth is that you manipulated an unhappy situation for your own benefit. You saw an opportunity to take what belonged to me, and you took it. I gave Beth what she needed, what she deserved. You gave Beth an affair. There's a difference." Beth stepped forward from where she'd been standing behind John. She looked tired and older than her 36 years. "Mark," she said quietly, "this isn't helping anyone." "Isn't it?" "I think it's helping a lot. I think people deserve to know who they're dealing with when they hire Parrish Electric. They deserve to know that the company is run by someone who takes responsibility for his actions, not someone who steals money and blames other people for his problems." "You're destroying your own daughters," Beth said. "I'm protecting my daughters from people who would use them as weapons in an adult conflict. We never used them as weapons. You took them away from their home and their father to live with the man you were having an affair with. How is that not using them as weapons?" The crowd was getting larger, and I could see more news vans arriving. John's carefully orchestrated media event was turning into something he couldn't control. "Mr. Parrish," Jennifer Walsh said, "what's your response to the allegations about your treatment of your family?" "My response is that I've been fighting for my family since the day I discovered my wife was having an affair with my brother. I've been fighting to maintain the business that supports not just my family, but dozens of employees and their families. And I've been fighting to preserve the reputation that my mother spent 20 years building." A car pulled into the parking lot, and I saw Mom get out, followed by Bill Henderson and Frank Morrison. They walked over to our group, and I could see Mom taking in the scene. The protesters, the news cameras, John and Beth standing together like a united front. "What's going on here?" Mom asked. "John's trying to salvage his reputation by destroying mine," I said. "That's not true," John protested. "I'm trying to expose the truth about what Mark's been doing to this family and this company." Mom looked at John for a long moment, then turned to the reporter. "I'm Ruth Parrish, owner of Parrish Electric. If you want the truth about this company, I can provide it." "Mrs. Parrish, we'd appreciate any comment you can give." Mom stepped in front of the cameras, and I could see her gathering herself the way she did before important business meetings. "Parrish Electric has been serving this community for 20 years, she said. "We've built our reputation on honest work, fair dealing, and treating our employees and clients with respect. That reputation has never been compromised by financial misconduct or unprofessional behavior." "But what about the allegations?" "The allegations against my son Mark are false. The allegations against my son John, unfortunately, are true." John's face went white. "Mom, John Parrish is no longer associated with Parrish Electric in any capacity. He was removed from the company 3 weeks ago after an investigation revealed systematic financial fraud and client manipulation." The reporter turned to John. "Mr. Parrish, how do you respond to your mother's statement?" John stood there for a moment, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. Then he turned and walked toward his car without saying anything. "John, wait!" Beth called after him. But John kept walking. He got in his car and drove away, leaving Beth standing alone in front of the cameras and the growing crowd of spectators. "Mrs. Beth Parrish," the reporter said, "do you have any comment?" Beth looked around at the faces watching her. The news crew, the protesters who'd been hired to support John's narrative, the employees and neighbors who'd come to see what the commotion was about. For a moment, she looked like she might say something. Then she shook her head and walked away. The protesters began to disperse, realizing that whatever they'd been paid to do was no longer relevant. The news crew packed up their equipment, having gotten a much better story than they'd expected. "Mark," Mom said as the crowd thinned out, "are you okay?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. This isn't how I wanted things to end. It's how they needed to end." Bill Henderson walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. "That took guts, son, standing up in front of everyone like that." "It took evidence," I said. "Guts are just what you need when the evidence is on your side." Frank Morrison nodded. "The company's going to be stronger for this. Clients like to know they're dealing with people who have integrity." As the parking lot emptied out, I stood looking up at the Parrish Electric sign, illuminated against the dark sky. For the first time in months, I felt like the company name meant something I could be proud of. My phone buzzed with a text message from Bew. "Dad, we saw you on the news. Mom's crying, but Bree and I think you did the right thing. Can we come home now?" I smiled and typed back, "Pack your bags. I'll pick you up in an hour." Some circuits, when they overload, just burn out quietly. Others put on quite a show before they finally short out completely. John had definitely put on a show. But the lights were still on at Parrish Electric, and they were going to stay on for a long time to come. Funny thing about electricity, if you don't respect it, you're bound to get shocked. And some shocks, as John was about to discover, last a lot longer than others.